Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen. Welcome back to Autism Live and to Ask Dr. Doreen. We're here with Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet and she's answering your questions in real time. I promised that we were going to get to some YouTube things when we came back. And so, but then of course I forgot. Oh, I know which one I said. Indira wants to know, is autism really curable and how?
Right. So this is a super touchy subject for a lot of people. I guess I never thought of it as this way, but I've learned that when people hear the word cure, they think that it means that the thing that you are leaving behind was bad.
Right.
And so it's a little bit offensive to a lot of people who think, or to some people who feel like autism is not so bad, so why should we be cured of it? We don't want to lose who we are as people. And so I want to start with that because I understand that perspective. I get it. I get what they're saying. But I want to offer another perspective, my perspective. And I've been treating individuals on the autism spectrum for 40 years, more than 40 years. So I want to be able to say that I don't look at it that way. I don't look at it as leaving the personality behind or leaving the person behind or in any way doing anything offensive to the being, to the person. I'm a clinical psychologist, and you know, as any other doctor, what we do is we look at things that we call disorders. Maybe that's the word that people should be shunning or hating, but the bottom line is that there are a series of things called disorders, and there are some medical disorders and there's some mental disorders, and we all talk about mental health all the time. And if you look at mental disorders, there's a book called the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM. And anything that goes into this book has to be, by definition, a disorder. Now, what does a disorder mean? It means that it is a condition that makes it difficult for the individual to function in society. So it is a condition that basically makes it difficult to either function at home, at work, or in social life. One of those environments, which is sort of it encompasses all of the environments that we're in. If it's a child, it would be school instead of work. But it is very clearly defined. So I always use the example of someone who drinks a lot. Right? So you can drink, you know, a bottle of whiskey every single day, and as long as you have a job that you hold and you're good at it, and you go to work regularly and there's no problems at work, and your family is very happy with you, and your spouse and everybody else loves you, and you're not abusive to anyone, and you're a good father and whatever, or mother, and in the social world, you have friends and you're doing great and there's no complaints and you're not driving drunk or whatever it is, then you have no problem. The fact that you drink a bottle of whiskey or scotch or whatever doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It's not a problem. But the minute that it becomes a problem, so you're losing your job, or you're not showing up for work, or you're being abusive to a family member, or you're driving drunk, or you're doing something inappropriate in society, but as soon as you do that, then it classifies as a disorder because it has now made it difficult to function amongst society. And that's kind of very, very important to identify that. Now, anything and everything in that book, the intention of healthcare professionals is to help people do well in their lives. Our job is to help someone who has a disorder overcome the disorder, not necessarily leave behind who they were, but overcome all the things that made it hard for them to function in society. And that's what it is. And so with autism, I look at it exactly the same way. No one ever works on trying to alter someone's personality. It's a matter of, with autism, what ABA does is you take the individual and you identify what their strengths are and what their areas of weakness are. And the strengths you use and you reinforce and you highlight, and the areas of weakness you teach. And you try to teach the individual, you change, like, so you increase the language areas and you teach the individual how others socialize and how this world's social behavior is. And you teach the individual how to have academic skills so they can go to school and how to play with peers. And if it's an older individual, you teach them how to get a job and so on and so forth. So all the stuff that and you teach them that tantruming or hitting is not an appropriate form of communication. And all of these things that we do in ABA are not intended in any way to change the personality of the individual, but they're intended to help the individual function better in the world. So when we're able to do that to a point that is really really good, successful, to a point that the person that you're working with learns everything, then you've achieved your goal, which means that you've helped this person get to a point which is typical development, get to a point where all their peers are at the same point. So whether it's in social, language, play, academic, adaptive behaviors, you name it, they're functioning like their peers. You've now taught them all the things so that there's no area of weakness, or if there is an area of weakness, it's the same level of weakness as other peers. So they have now become indistinguishable from peers in all areas of functioning. And that is, you can call that whatever you want to call it. You can call it recovered, cured, remediated, indistinguishable from peers, I don't care. The word doesn't matter. The fact that they had autism doesn't ever go away. So I actually, within my head, I like recovered over cured, because I feel like cured has a different meaning to me. I don't know. It's sort of like, whatever it is, basically the individual is now functioning well in society, and they no longer have those symptoms that defined that mental disorder. There are specific symptoms of autism, right? The symptoms are, and you have to hit those symptoms, right? There's very little eye contact, there's very little communication, there's the communication not appropriate to peers, you know, there's social behavior that is less than what peers would have. There's all these types of things, and if all of those are gone, you no longer classify for, I can't give you that diagnosis anymore. So the diagnosis is removed, and that is the ultimate goal.
The diagnosis of the disorder.
Of the disorder.
And that's the thing that's always significant for me. And since you asked, you know, you asked about a specific word, and I said we were going to talk a little bit about that word, but it's going to divert a little bit. But is it possible for someone to get to the point where at
They
one
lose
point
the diagnosis?
they had the diagnosis, and at another point they no longer qualify for it?
Yes, there is.
Yes, I mean,
Absolutely, yes.
100 times over, yes.
100 times
and
over, yes.
We have examples. We've had people on the show that are examples of that.
That's
Yes,
right.
that can happen.
That's
But
right.
now the other part of her question was how.
How?
Because you will see that in news articles they will cover this phenomenon, and they will say, can children outgrow autism?
Yes.
And this offends me to the core of my being. As if they went to sleep a certain number of sleeps and suddenly they didn't have the disorder anymore.
Right,
And everybody goes, that
That's
is
the-
such a disservice to all the people that work so hard and the individual who works their tuchus off to learn things that they didn't know before.
That's right. That's right. So no, the answer to the second part is you don't outgrow it. What you do is a lot of hard work.
You outwork it.
And you outwork it. And the work is across all different levels. And I don't, I'll try to just give you a global view of it. We talk about ABA. ABA is the key to it because it is the one that everybody needs and it's super successful. And really what it is look at it as intensive tutoring using specific techniques. It's hard to explain, but basically ABA has to do with rewarding behaviors that you want to increase and not rewarding behaviors that you want to decrease. So, I mentioned that you take skills and deficit areas or weaknesses. You look at those and you list for yourself, my child can do all these things, but they cannot do all these other things that their peers can do. And then it's a matter of teaching all of those things using these very specific techniques. And in the meantime, the sooner you do that, the better, because most of the time when kids cannot communicate, typically, they will develop these other non-functional, non-adaptive behaviors like tantrums and so on, which become their mode of communication. They tend to aggress, tantrum, and so on instead of talking. So autism mostly is those types of behaviors, and you can definitely alter those. Now, I do want to mention that ABA alone doesn't work for everyone. ABA works for everyone, but it doesn't work perfectly as it should for everyone. And what I mean by that is that there are some children who are medically ill and they need attention to the medical issues before they're in a place to learn. It's like us, just like anyone else. If you feel awful, if you have things that are holding you back because of you're not sleeping, you have gastrointestinal issues, your head is cloudy, if all of that stuff is going on, you're going to have a very hard time learning. And if you're having a hard time learning, it slows you down. And the whole goal of ABA is you got to learn fast because you got to catch up. You've now not been learning for a few years, so you have to catch up. So for a lot of kids, it's important to pay attention to their biochemistry as well. And so it's important to look at things like, does my child have food allergies? Is my child reacting to certain things they eat? Does my child have high levels of toxicity? Does my child have yeast infections? Is my child sleeping? There's a multitude of medical issues that need to be dealt with as well, I would say. And then once those are, and you can do some of this at the same time, right, concurrently, but it is really important to make sure, I always say, you want to medically stabilize. You want to make sure the child is not getting worse. And you want to make sure the child is sleeping, eating well, getting nutrition from what they're eating so that their brain is awake and alive and they're able to learn. And then you want to do the intensive intervention.
There you go. Hey, thanks for watching Autism Live. To subscribe, click here. And if you'd like to check out some more of our videos, click here.